Once you take your pieces off of the machine, you're going to stretch them out and then slightly cinch the ends so that you can flatten out the curling. Take 4 stitch markers and you're going to count down 25 rows from the end. So start at the end and count down 25. And then place a stitch marker there. And then repeat this on the other side, on the other one. Next, you're going to take a long piece of yarn and we're going to match stitch these two pieces together. You got to match stitch from the top and then stop at the stitch marker and then start back at the stitch marker and continue on. You can also just take 2 separate pieces of yarn and match stitch from one end to the stitch marker and then take your second piece of yarn and do the exact same thing over here. So line your stitches up. When you match your stitch, you're just picking up the bars in between the stitches. And I'm picking up 2 bars at a time. You can also do 1 bar at a time. See the bars there. And now I'm going to pull my yarn tail. I'm pulling it so that I have enough to go over to the other side. And I do that just by taking it into the stitches and bringing it out on the other side where your stitch marker is located. And now you're going to start mattress stitching from here. Make sure not to pull too tight because remember you have your yarn tail going through this portion here, and so you don't want to pull it too tight. You just want to pull it enough so that your mattress stitching becomes invisible. You can remove your stitch markers now. And so this is how your piece should look right now, with a small opening. You should have 14 stitches in the opening. Okay, next you're going to fold your piece in half. So right now we have a lot of yarn tails. So to save on yarn, I just like to use the yarn tails if I can. If I'm not able to, then of course use a separate piece of yarn. So for this one, I'm going to use a separate piece now that I'm looking over my yarn tails. So before we start sewing our ends closed, tie off all of your yarn tails and then hide them inside the work. And I do that by finding a bar and then wrapping the yarn around it and pulling through to make a knot. Okay, I have all of my yarn tails tied off. Okay, now we fold it back in half. And we're going to sew the ends closed. We're going to do one layer at a time. So first we're going to sew the inner layer together, which are the sides that are touching the closest. And then we're going to sew the outer layers together. So to do this, you're just going to pick up a stitch. For the inner ones, you're going to pick up the stitch, the very top stitch that's on your cast off or cast on row. And so we're just picking up the one on the very top here. And you just continue that all the way across. Okay, and now you just pull your yarn tail. As you see, the inner layer is sewn together. And now I'm going to use the same yarn tail to sew the outer layers together. And you're just going to start by picking up. Now you can do it the exact same way that you did the inner layer, but I prefer to instead of just going through the loop, you're going to pick up the whole stitch instead of going in between it like we did with the inner layer. You want to pick up the whole stitch. If it's difficult to pick up the whole stitch of the very top row, you can just pick up the second stitch. And so we're just going to pick up a stitch on one side and then pick up a stitch on the other side all the way across. I'm just going to continue doing this all the way across, and then I will be back. Okay, so I have sewn it together, and I'm going to tie off my yarn tails by just tying them together and then hiding them inside the work. Okay, so we have our front and our back, and now we have to close our, which will be our top and our bottom. So grab some more yarn. I'm gonna get 2 yarn tails, or 2 pieces of yarn. And now we're going to make a drawstring around the opening by, in a sense, making a running stitch. We're not going to pick up, we're not going to just go through like normal, a normal drawstring. You're just taking the yarn tail all the way around, going under all of the stitches. But for this, we're going to pick up every other bar. So it's almost like making a running stitch around. So I'm not going to pick up the bar of this next stitch. I'm going to go over it and then go under the stitch afterwards. And I'm going to keep doing that all the way around. And I'm doing this just to make the cinched area not so bulky. Okay, and now you're going to pull tight. And then tie your yarn tails together. And then hide them inside the work. And then we're going to repeat the same thing on the opposite side. So here is one end. So we just repeat the same thing, making our running stitch around the opening, picking up every other bar, And we have our pouch. And this is where you will place your mini stuffed animals. I'm going to take my little rabbit here, or my little bunny. There it goes. You can, if you want to put a latch or something there to keep it completely closed, that's perfectly fine, but I think this works as well. And when you want to bring it out, you just pull the top over, and there you go. You can make your pouches in all different colors. Take my little cow. I hope you like this tutorial, and I would love to see your work, so tag me on social media. Thank you for watching.